Hello everyone, hope we are doing well. This is Paul from the APN Academy, and in today's video we're going to be looking at how we can do trend lines. Now there's been a lot of talks about trend lines. They don't work, they create a lot of false breakouts and all that, but the fact is that trend lines do work and they work perfectly. There are those traders who have been using trend lines for years and have been profitable, but the question is, do you know how to use them correctly? So that's the reason as to why we're making this video, so that we can learn how to draw trend lines correctly and what rules do we follow while drawing trend lines. So, but before we go to all of that, we have to first define what trend lines are so that we can understand them in depth. So the first thing we're going to do is first explain and understand what trend lines are, because if you do not understand what you're dealing with, you may not, like, the definition gives us where to start from. So what is a trend line? A trend line is simply a line, or it's a diagonal line, right? That is joining turning points. Now, what are turning points in the market? For example, if the market is moving up, creates a turning point here, where it decides when it moves up and where it starts coming down from. This is what we are calling a turning point. And when it comes and starts moving up from here, this is what we are calling a turning point. So we are saying that when the market is moving up and down, it's creating turning points, right, that need to be joined. Now, if we can join these turning points using a diagonal line, it means that this diagonal line is what we are calling a trend line. Are we together? The same applies to when the market is going down. The market creates a low and then starts going up from here. Then again, it creates a high, then starts coming down from here, then creates again a high, creates a low, then again creates a high, and again creates a low. When we are making lower lows and lower highs, the market can be, these turning points here can be joined by this diagonal line, which we are calling a trend line. That's why we're defining it as, it is just a diagonal line that is joining turning points of price on the chart. A chart like any platform that you're using to do your analysis. Now, sometimes people call these swing highs, swing lows, swing highs, swing lows, swing highs, swing lows. These turning points here, the turning points either a low or a high. It doesn't matter how you call it, but you just need to understand how to properly use them and how to properly mark them. Now, having understood what a trend line is, what is the use of this trend line? Let's first understand the use of the trend line. As usual, we're going to start with theory, and then we go to the practical side, because we have to first understand what we're dealing with. Now, let's look at the uses. One, in the previous video that we did, you're going to find a link in the description in case you didn't watch, about support and resistance, how to identify support and resistances properly. We talked about trend lines being also, or acting as support and resistance. So the first use is it's acting as support and resistance. What is support and what is resistance? Support, we say it is a level or an area that is below current price. For example, if this is current price, right? Let me abbreviate it as CPX, and the level is below here that we're talking about. We have marked the level below current price. This level below here is what we call support. It's a level below current price where we expect buyers to come in. We're expecting buyers to come in, but it's not a must that they're supposed to come into the market at that particular time or that particular area. Then resistance. What is resistance? Resistance is an area above current price where we expect sellers to come into the market. If this is your current price, and the area where we expect sellers to come into the market is here, this is what we call resistance, because in this area is where we expect sellers to come into the market. And how do we get these levels here? We get them through also turning points. That's why we're saying that trend lines also acting as support and resistance, but this time they're not horizontal ones, they are diagonal ones. How? If this is you've connected these two turning points and these ones, if price is here, it means it's at resistance. because it's at a point whereby we expect sellers to come into the market. And if the market starts coming down, let's say the current price is here, this point below here, this trend line below will act as your support. This will be your resistance. Why? Because this point here, this trend line or this diagonal is above current price. And that's a level where we expect sellers to come into the market. Why? Because of these previous historical points that showed us that these turning points showed us historically or previously that whenever price reaches 8 turns, so you can either have a support horizontally or diagonally. I hope we are following. Then the second one is it helps in identifying direction. How does it help in identifying direction? For example, if the market creates a high, creates a low, and then creates a high, then again creates a higher low. This is a high, this is a low. Creates a higher high, creates a higher low. Now, by definition, what we call an uptrend. An uptrend is when the market is creating higher highs, or it's a situation whereby market price is creating higher highs and higher lows. Now, how do you know that the market is creating higher highs and higher lows? You can either use support, the horizontal levels, or you can use a trend line. So these trend lines can tell you that, oh, actually the market is making higher highs and higher lows, and you can be able to know the direction of the market. Hope we're following. Then it also helps us in marking higher highs and lower lows, or with lower highs. Now, I've already showed you that here, the market, these turning points here, if this turning point is lower than this upper one here, we know that the market made a higher high. Now, how does it help us to mark? Remember we said we're going to look at how we draw trend lines. And one of the rules is that you have to draw using 2 or more turning points. Now, where the market or the price turns from, it's giving you a starting point and you connect it to the second one. So this one is helping us to identify or mark the higher highs and lower lows, right? So this is all about trend lines, but having understood just this part, I would like us also to look at the steps or the correct way of drawing these trend lines. This is where most people tend to blunder, but today we're going to look at the rules and we're going to go through practical examples and you will see the mistakes you've been making. In case you've been trading, or if you're just new to trading, these are the mistakes you're not supposed to be making. Are we together? Now, let's just talk about how to draw the trend lines. The very first thing is you have to know the time frame in which you are. Remember, we talked about time frames. If you're not aware about the different uses of time frames, I'm also going to just attach the video in the description. Make sure you watch it. Different time frames have different uses. So if you're in a big time frame, or what we call analysis time frame, that's what I'm meaning. I'm meaning monthly, I'm meaning weekly, and I'm meaning daily. Any of them, depending on the type of trader you are. So if you're in any of these time frames, the trend line that you're drawing here or that you're going to mark here has a specific use. Remember, we said these big time frames give us target areas or they give us areas of interest. So we're not, the trend lines we're drawing, we're not using them to take trades. Instead, we're using them to get areas of interest, to get areas where we're going to start hunting for our trades, to get areas where we're going to start thinking of taking trades. That's what we call areas of interest. And then the ones that you're going to draw in small time frames, which can be your entry time frames or refining time frames. These ones, these trend lines are for taking entries. Are we together? So you have to, the first thing is you have to know what time frame am I drawing there? Am I drawing the trend lines from? Now that's the first one. The second point is you have to join at least 2 or more turning points. Sometimes people call them swing lows. I've already explained that. So I'm not going to delay on it. Simply here, I mean that if you have this turning point, the market came down again, turned from here, it went up, turned from here, came down, turned from here. We need 2 or more. This is the first turning point. This is the second one. So I need the first one and the second one. Then the third one is actually most times where we we are interested in taking the trades from. Even here, the third point is normally where we're most interested in taking trades from. This is the first turning point, second turning point, and then the third turning point. Are we together, guys? So this is the second one, sorry, second. So we need at least two. You cannot draw a trend line by just one. Sometimes you're going to see someone's chart having down there, let's say 1, 2, 3, then up it only has a point where it's hanging just, but up here price is not touching anywhere, it just touches here, then it starts hanging. This upper one is not correct. You cannot draw a trend line basing on one turning point. You need two or more turning points to draw a trend line. Are we together? Now, let's go to the next one. Then when you're drawing the trend line, or the first thing you do when you want to draw a trend line is you have to zoom out, right? You have to zoom out so that you can see properly the levels that are a bit obvious. Now, when I draw, or when I identify the levels or the turning points are a bit obvious, I have to zoom out, sorry, to zoom in so that I can see and adjust them properly. We're going to look at that on the chart. This one needs to be done practically. Like, you have to zoom in first to identify the turning points that are a bit clear to you or that are more clearer to you. Then you zoom out and you adjust them properly to like fit the rules that we're going to talk about, or that we're talking about right now, right? Now, sorry. The next one is when you're drawing a trend line, you have to start from the first turning point that you're starting from, any point that you've chosen to start from. You have to start from the lowest week. Remember here we're drawing it from the candlestick chart, right? We're drawing it from the candlestick chart. Now, you have to ensure that where the point you've chosen to draw or start drawing from, you have to ensure that you're drawing it from the lowest point possible. Do not draw from, unless the week is so long. If the week is so long, you can start from the other one. But if the weeks are normal, what I mean by long is sometimes we can have events on news and long weeks are created whereby the candle moves down, for example, and then rejects and closes like this. And we have a very long tail of what we call a wick or a rejection, right? Or if the market was going down, if the market was going up, the price rejects and then closes somewhere around here, right? So sometimes the tail is so long that it will make you to be inaccurate, but we're going to look at all those scenarios on the chart. Now, we have to start with either the lowest or the highest week. You have to start from this point here or this point on the first point that you've chosen, of the point that you've chosen, right? Now, let's go to the second one. Now, after choosing the first point where you're going to draw from, remember we have said either you're choosing the lowest. Lowest, I mean, if you're drawing from down to up, if you're drawing a support, right? And then if you're drawing a resistance, you have to choose from the highest point. If you're drawing a resistance trend line, this is a support. The support is below the current price, and then the resistance is above the current price. Do not forget that. So if after choosing this first point of the highest wick here, I have to connect or join as many wicks as possible on this from the second point onwards. I have to choose the best fit. There is not this part. You have to choose the best fit. Now, what most people are told is that you have to connect just wicks. That is wrong. You will miss out trades, and also you will be affected by false breakouts. That is what is causing a lot of problems. Actually, it's the biggest factor for most trendline traders. They are joining the turning points or the swing lows and swing highs wrongly. So to avoid that, make sure you're choosing the best fit by connecting or joining as many wicks as possible from the next turning point onwards. This is the first one. Remember, first one we're choosing either highest. In this case, is a resistance, so we're choosing the highest point. If it is a support like here, we're choosing the lowest point on the first one. Then on the second one here, if there are no matter how many candles there are, make sure you're choosing as many wicks as possible, but without cutting the candlestick body. It's only when the price comes to it, it can cut. But the points that you've chosen do not cut the candlestick body. You can cut through the wicks, but do not cut through the candlestick body, right? So those are the rules that you have to follow when drawing trend lines. And then also the last one that I have to mention here is we consider taking trades normally on the third turning point. But you do not just take a trade. If the price has reached that turning point, for example, if this is the trend line, this is my first turning point, then it went up, came back, my second turning point. It doesn't mean that when the trade just comes back, you have to take. You have to consider all the factors that you use to take trades. Price action, if you're a pattern trader, in case there's a pattern that has been formed, in case you're a candlestick pattern trader, in case you would not just take a trade. We need certain factors to happen before we can take the trade. Either we need a change of trend for the market to shift from selling, right? Just making lows to making highs, right? Depending on the factor that you use to take trades, those factors have to first happen here. They have to first occur here before you take the trade. Without that, the market can easily continue down. Are we together? So these are the rules that we have for drawing trend lines. So we're just going to go to the chart and then we do these things practically. And I'm going to show you the right way. And also I'm going to show you how most people are doing it, and you'll see how trend lines are supposed to be drawn correctly, and it will really add something to your trading. Actually, you'll have a better edge in case you're a trend line trader, or if you're planning to use them, or you've been looking for a way of using them correctly or accurately. This is how you're supposed to do it. Follow the rules that we have just spoken about. We have defined trend lines. Then we looked at the uses of trend lines. Then we have talked about the rules of how we're supposed to draw them. This is just theory. Now let's go to the charts and then we do it practically, because trading is not about words. Trading is about doing, right? So now let's go to the charts. Okay, so right now I'm on my charts. I'm using TradingView, but you can use any platform of your choice in case you're comfortable with CTrader, in case you're comfortable with MetaTrader or the TradingView, it's fine. You can use any of your choice. Now, let's start with the first example. Remember, we said the first thing to do is to identify the time frame you're in so that you know the use of that particular trend line. For example, right now I'm in weekly. I'm going to draw my trend line weekly. So that trend line I'm drawing is not for taking entries. Rather, it's for identifying area of interest. Are we together? So what we're going to do first is, remember, we're supposed to first zoom. You're supposed to first zoom out, right? You're supposed to first zoom out, and then let me just zoom out properly here so that we can see. So, and we say that you're supposed to identify obvious turning points. So, for example, when you look at this part, let's just not go so far. Let's just use this area here. When you look at this part, you can already see some obvious turning points that could give you a trend line. For example, you have this area here. Let's first draw several of them, and then we shall come and adjust them according to the rules. Then also we have this one here. Then also, let's see, we have this one here. Then also, let's see, we have something here. We have something here. Okay, we can use these ones for examples, but also let's mark this one here. We have something here like this, right? So let's try to adjust these ones according to our rules, and then we see the faults or the mistakes we have been making so that we're able to correct them. Now, let me just zoom in. Just zoom in. Okay. So that you're able to see the candles well. Let's start with this first one. We shall be going backwards. Now, the way most people draw trend lines, of course, sometimes it will give you results, but not most times. We're just going to go through with all the examples that we have done. Also here, you can have a trend line in case you want. Also here, you can have a trend line here like this. Now, let's start with this first one here. Now, I was saying that most times you're going to draw your trend line, and if you're using the method that I told you how most people draw it, like joining weeks, most people are told to join weeks. For example, if this is the first tip of the week, this one here, they will join with the highest tip on the second one here. But remember, our rules are saying that if you're drawing a resistance, make sure you connect. The first one is where you've chosen this one. For example, I've chosen this point and this point, my 2 points, my 2 turning points. So how am I going to draw it? I want to make sure on the second point. Let's first start with the false you people are doing, or most traders are doing is they want to connect with the highest point also here like this. Yes, of course, sometimes it's going to give you, but for example, like here, you see it didn't touch properly. But if you can extend it down to touch as many candles as possible from the second point onwards, for example, here, you can clearly see that I'm not cutting the candlestick body because the rule says I'm not supposed to cut the candlestick body. So you can clearly see that we are touching as many candlesticks body as possible, and also on the third touch point, we are touching the candlestick wick, right? So this is the first one. Now let's also look at this other one here. The first way how most people draw trend lines is here they're going to use the wick like it. They're going to touch if this is their first touch point or turning point, they are going to use the highest turning point here and also the highest wick here, which sometimes will work in your favor. For example, here it would have worked for you. You saw a trend line and then you, of course, we're in weekly. So this is a very big movement. But if you imagine you adjusted it properly to touch as many wicks as possible, you will be more accurate than that person who is just considering highest points. Here, I'm cutting through the wick, but touching as many wicks as possible so that I can find a better accuracy. Now, let's use also this one here. Let's adjust it. Remember, we said we first zoomed out, then we are zooming in just to adjust our candles, right? Now, this is our first turning point here, and then this is our second turning point. Now here, let me just first zoom out to adjust this. Now here, most people are going to, let me zoom in so that we can see properly. Here, this time around, it worked in our favor, right? It worked. We had the first turning point, how most people draw trend lines. Then they again using the lowest wick on the second one, right? So this time it worked, but most times it's not going to be in your favor. Like the first 2 times we have seen, you're not going to be accurate, right? But let's also adjust in the way that we have spoken about. We're supposed to touch as many wicks as possible from the second point onwards. Now I'm just going to adjust to touch both of the wicks, these 2 wicks here. The first one we're touching on a 1, but let's touch 2 wicks. You're going to see that the candles are properly closing exactly on the trend line, right? So now remember we have said that we're in weekly and these trend lines are for different uses. Now on the third touch point, which we say that is our area of interest, on the third touch point, which I said is our area of interest, after you marking, remember I'm using the first touch point, the second touch point. We're assuming that this area is not there. This touch is not there yet. When the market reaches this area, it's not that you're supposed to buy immediately. You're supposed to go into your entry timeframes to look for what price is doing at that particular point. Are we together? For example, if let's say I use my H4 to take trades, let me just zoom out to identify the area. Let's say here, if I use H4, when price comes in this area here that we have identified, in this area here, let me just zoom in. When price comes into this area here that we have identified, we have to look out for our rules here, right? For example, it touched, immediately touches, this one we were a bit lucky, but immediately touches, that means that you're supposed to buy, or immediately you see, you're supposed to look out for your rules that you use to take confirmations. You're supposed to look out for price actions that is indicating for you that price is no longer selling, but it's now changed and it's going to start buying. Are we together? Whenever, that's one of the #1 reasons why people are still blowing money and losing a lot of money from the market, because when you mark your support and resistance levels and immediately the price reaches that level, you want to buy or sell. If you're at resistance, you want to sell immediately. If you're at support, you want to sell immediately, which is very dangerous. And it's very difficult for someone to obtain or to gain the level to attain the level of consistency when you're trading like that, because market makers are aware of those levels. The same level that you're marking, they're very aware of them, right? So that's what you're supposed to do. Observe price action here. For example, if you trade double bottoms, if you trade head and shoulders, if you trade impulsive moves, if you trade using Fibonacci retracement tools, wait for price action to give you a go ahead that now you can take your trade. Now let's first go back to weekly. We continue with the trend lines that we had marked. Let me just zoom out. So we have so far done these three. Now let's come here again. Now here, let me just let's just use this. Now here, remember we start with the lowest point or the highest point. So let's start with the downer one. Now let's first draw it the way other people would draw. Other people would draw it like this. Are you seeing on the second touch point here? They would draw it using the lowest wick possible. Now I want you guys to notice something here. You are again missing your third touch point. Remember, we're interested in our third touch point. And what is this going to cause? This is going to cause chasing trades, and you have bad entries, you're having poor risk to reward ratios, and all that, all the reasons that follow with that. But if you draw it the way we have said, cross through as many wicks as possible, but from the second touch point, do not cut the candlestick body. So here I'm crossing through all the candlestick wicks. I just want you guys to see here. Now I'll just draw like this. Are you guys seeing? I have my second touch point properly, and I also have the third one. So I can go to my lower time frame and observe price action here, and I'll not miss the trade. Even when the trade came back here, I'm still getting the trade. I'm still getting the other opportunity to take the trade. But when I draw like this, how most people are drawing, I'm missing the third touch and I'm missing the fourth touch. Right together. But if I draw like this, how we have drawn, I am having all these touches. Let's just extend. You'll see even you have a proper breakout, right? You also have a proper breakout here. Let me just adjust this. Okay, like this. I see second touch point, third, fourth, fifth, until the market broke out and retested nicely. Are we together? So that is how we draw trend lines. Let's also adjust this one here. Remember, the rule is start from the highest point over the area of identified. This is our first highest point. Then on the second touch, most people would draw like this. I just want you to see this. Most people would draw like this. You're not getting the third touch. Are you seeing? Then that's when you start saying that trend lines do not work. Trend lines do not work. Trend lines do work, but you're using it wrongly. And I want you guys to observe something. When you draw like this, the market maker is aware. This is the first touch point. Second, the highest wick you're using. What did the market maker do? You saw a breakout and you may think this is a retest. But actually it's not a retest. It gives you a small buy and then boom, you lose money. Even when it comes back here, it gives you hope that it's going to buy. Boom, you're losing money. So that's not the correct way of drawing let me just delete this, of drawing trend lines. The correct way is this. On the second touch point, join as many wicks as possible, like this. Now, when I adjust remember this, my first touch point, this one, then this is my second touch point. Before you were doing like this, touching the highest points, but now I'm adjusting to touch as many wicks as possible or to cross as many wicks as possible. And you can clearly see that I have my first touch point, I have my second touch point, and I have my third touch point. Are you seeing? Now let's also try to adjust and elongate it a bit. Let's try to elongate it. Let's just try to elongate this, make it a bit longer. When I bring it longer, you can clearly see that I had my breakout and the market came back to confluence with the downward trend and upper one. So I am having a proper confluence to take this buy. Are we together? Of course, also we have a nice trend line here. There's a nice trend line here. We could also have used this trend line here like this. We have a trend line here, right? but we didn't identify it. But there is this touch point, second touch point, third touch point. You can clearly see proper breakout and a retest. I see. But people would be drawing it like this. I see. When you draw it like this, you will think it even gave you a morning star here in a bigger time frame, and you would fall for that trap. Are you guys seeing this? You would fall for that trap, which is not good. But if you draw it like this, you will clearly see that there's a breakout, and with a proper retest of price action areas, with a proper retest. Are you seeing this? So avoid the mistakes that we have so far looked at, guys. Avoid those mistakes that we have so far looked at. So this is the correct way of drawing trend lines, right? Let's continue with this one here. Now, we say that we are still adjusting. Now, this is how people draw like this. Now, this one worked out, but you're missing out a proper retest, right? This one worked out, but you're missing out, this one worked out, but out of all the ones that we have done, how many so far we have worked out using the lowest turning point, in case we start with the lowest turning point or the highest turning point, and also we use the highest turning point on the second touch point. So far, we have only had 2 out of all the trend lines that we have drawn. Let me see how many. This is the only one. This one here. This other one did not touch. This one did not touch. Those are 3, 4, 5, 6. So out of 6, only 2 have worked out. So meaning out of 6, you have 2 out of 6. But the other 4 out of 6 are not for you. So why don't you adjust and you start using this method of drawing trend lines? You're going to avoid a lot of mistakes, and you're going to avoid a lot of losses. So this one worked out properly for you, right? We had a break plus a retest of structure, of course, here. Now let's continue. Did we have another one? No, I think we stopped here, right? So let's take another example. Let me just pick here. Let's take Euro JPY. So as usual, we first zoom out. Let's first zoom out, and then we identify obvious levels. Let's zoom out, and we identify obvious levels. Now, here we have an obvious level, this one here, right? And then also we have an obvious level, this one. Sorry, obvious turning points, this one here. Then also, you could say there's this obvious turning point here. This one here. Let's first draw them anyhow, then we shall come back. Let's continue. Okay, let's stop here for purposes of time. Now let's zoom in and we see. Let's just try to adjust this. Let's try to be able to see the candles so that we can adjust. Okay. First reduce the size of this so that we can adjust it properly. Now, remember we said we start with the lowest point. So here, this is our lowest point here. This is our lowest point. Then let's adjust it according to the rules. Now, sorry, we can't see the candle there. So we need to see the wicks properly. Now, according to the rules, here, originally someone will be drawing like this, and you're seeing your third touch point is here. You're missing out trades. But if you're to adjust it correctly, like this, to touch as many wicks as possible, you'll be having this touch point. You'll be having 1, 2, the third one didn't touch here. This one, we missed it out. We missed out this trade. It didn't apply for us. It did not. Instead, it gave us this breakout. But if you are drawn like this, you would actually even not see that breakout, right? You would instead buy from here. Of course, these are many pips in weekly, but you would not see the breakout. By the time the market is breaking out and retesting for you, you'll be seeing it's going to buy. But if you draw it like this, you will clearly see that the market broke out here and actually even retested this structure here, right? So this is the first one. Let's come to the second one here. Let's come to the second one. Now, let's first draw the way most of you are drawing. Highest touch point, most of you would come and put here on the wick like this, right? And here it worked out nicely for you. But let's also draw it the way we're supposed to draw. Remember, touch as many wicks as possible, but do not cross. You can clearly see that I have a better point to consider than you. The first one, you're getting it from up here, you see? But me, I'm getting it from this rejection here. Why did the market reject there? Because it was colliding with this trend line. Are you seeing this trend line here? Do not cut the candlestick body. Now let's go to the downer one, this downer one here. Let's go to the downer one, of course, lowest point here, the lowest point. Then cut through as many wicks as possible, here. So here we would be having this, but also alternatively, because this is the first touch point, second touch point, and then the third touch point. Of course, remember, we're interested on the third touch point, and the third touch point, the market maker knows that you like using that. And alternatively, also would have this trend line here, this one here, right? Now, this one was a bit obvious, and even if you use a tip here, actually, if you use the tip here, you'd miss out on this, the lowest, then the tip. But if you're touching as many wicks as possible, you're getting the third touch, and you have all this move up, right? So in case you've been drawing the trend lines the first way that I showed you, please make sure you do those adjustments, and you'll see your levels of accuracy going up, or you'll see your confluences starting to come out, and you'll no longer be saying that trend lines don't work, they have a lot of false breakouts, they give an etc. So that is it for today's video. I hope you guys got value out of it. In case you got value out of it, please do not forget to like, and if you're new, do not forget to subscribe.